Start by saying that the Ahimsa minor should have come with a warning label and a list of lifelong side effects. Side effects may include showering while thinking of water scarcity, wondering what's going on in a crazy driver's life instead of flipping the bird, watching YouTube fashion hauls and being appalled that nobody mentions labor exploitation. And for the rest of your life, you will be aware of the ripples of every choice, the harm, the good. There is no going back. And perhaps most dangerous of all, instead of getting mad at the news, you may feel compelled to organize and drag along your exhausted friends and family. My name is Samantha DePietro Weissup, and I am guilty of all of those things. And it is Dr. Tarasettia's fault. I graduated from Cal Poly Pomona in 2010 with a degree in political science and a minor in Ahimsa. I came in already curious. I was a deadhead with a copy of Ram Dass on my shelf. I had gone to school with Reverend William Sloane Coffin's grandson, and I had a mother who taught me that I should leave the world a little bit better than I had found it. But an affinity is not a practice. I had a feeling I did not have a framework. I took a general education course on the history of nonviolence in the modern world with Dr. Setia, and it changed my world. What Dr. Setia built through this program was something very intentional. We weren't studying nonviolence as an idea. We were studying as a philosophy that says nonviolence is not passive. It isn't simply the absence of harm. It is reverence for all life. It is understanding that harming others is harming yourself. It is compassion, forgiveness, love, and courage in action. We studied Ahimsa as a method that could be applied across systems, politics, education, criminal justice, community life, our own personal conduct. Bacha Khan raised a nonviolent army of 100,000 inside a culture of blood vengeance and showed me that nonviolence isn't soft. It is the harder discipline. Gandhi made nonviolence a political method strong enough to move empires and showed me that Ahimsa can scale. Dr. King made it a moral demand that America could not unhear and showed me what it costs to actually live it. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission showed that forgiveness can be a structural choice, not just a private one, that whole societies can decide to repair rather than retaliate. Those lessons really land in your bones when you're in your early 20s and they refuse to leave. This program wasn't just an interdisciplinary minor, it was a course for my life. Criminal justice work I was studying in political science class, my work at the Stop Violence office here on campus, the convictions that I had grown up with. None of those were separate threads anymore. They were all one practice taught through different doors. One of those doors was the Stop Violence office, where I became a trained advocate for survivors of sexual assault, and I helped train the campus police here at Cal Poly. Because when an officer asks a survivor what she was wearing or how much she was drinking, instead of what the perpetrator did, that officer means to investigate. But what he is doing is harming instead. And that is what Ahimsa names so clearly, that harm done with good intent is still harm. Intent does not erase impact. I learned the same truth of a different tradition through Dr. Renford Reese, Ubuntu, the African philosophy that says, I am because we are. Dr. Reese had founded the prison education program here at Cal Poly, and through his courses, I visited local jails and met people on parole. The interdisciplinary heart of the Ahimsa program meant that I could carry the research from my political science classes directly into my Ahimsa capstone, researching Vipassana meditation as a path for transformation inside of prisons. After graduation, I volunteered teaching meditation breathing techniques to incarcerated women. The classroom had not ended. It had just walked out of the door with me. Ubuntu, Ahimsa, different words, the same truth. I spent 15 years since then raising money for organizations that protect education and connect people. I had the privilege of working with Dr. Clarence Jones to bring his Slavery to Obama course online. Ahimsa isn't just a college minor in my story. It is the way I've moved for the world for the last 20 years. And the deepest expression of that practice is the work I get to do every single day. Philanthropy means love of humanity. That is not a metaphor for me. It is the job description. I serve as a senior alumni relations and philanthropy officer at the International House at UC Berkeley, a community founded nearly 100 years ago with a single audacious idea that world peace begins with intercultural friendship and understanding. We aim to create peace by bringing together 600 residents from 70 nations every year to live together, to eat together, to exchange cultural traditions, to study together, to argue together, and see each other's humanity and become friends for life. But friendships are only the beginning. The residents go on to become world leaders across disciplines. And our hope is that when they reach that leadership, they will have the bravery to stem the tides of war in their nations, to help their peers see the humanity they experienced firsthand at iHouse, and to remember a friend from a place that they may be bombing. iHouse is a living learning laboratory outside of the classroom. And to me, that vision is ahimsa. Ahimsa doesn't stop at the office for me. If you're paying attention to the news, the discomfort of being awake doesn't go away. It can't. So the work becomes directing it into the right channels. For animals, I support the activists fighting for the right to rescue sick and injured animals slated for slaughterhouses at factory farms. For immigrants, I volunteer with the campaign to stop ICE detention center that's being proposed for Dublin about 20 minutes from my house. And I have to stop and acknowledge that I would not be standing here right now doing any of this without the help that I received as a student. To the donors who provided me with a $500 scholarship when I was a student doing my minor work, I never made it to the reception in 2009 to thank you. I had a stack of personal and family issues, and it was really the hardest year of my life. But you made that year a little bit easier for me. That scholarship gave me the breathing room to buy the books that I needed, to, live a little bit in my life. We are losing the Ahimsa Center at a moment that the world needs it most. When our students in the dorm rooms around here are placing bets on prediction markets, wagering money on the outcomes of war and casualty outcomes, as if human suffering is just another asset class. When DEI has been rolled back and the language of empathy stripped from our institutions after it felt like we had finally made progress after the death and horrific murder of George Floyd. When restorative justice is being abandoned for retributions and firing squads are making a comeback in America. When the highest office models cruelty over compassion. When we are withdrawing from the international frameworks built around our shared responsibility to one another. And that is the world that we are sending our next generation into without this program. And that makes me sad. But before I close, I really want to say something directly to you, Dr. Satya. Tara, what you built here changed my life. And I know I am not alone in that. This wasn't just a program. It wasn't a minor. It wasn't just an educational institute. You taught restorative justice before public schools were practicing it widely here in California. You brought voices from around the world into this space and put the Inland Empire on the map for nonviolent studies. You showed up for your students in ways that went far beyond the syllabus. Last year, my father was sick and dying, and you were one of the professors who showed up for me and allowed me to make up my classwork and graduate. That is ahimsa in action. I will never forget you telling us about the students in Haiti, desperate enough to be eating mud pies after the earthquake. And I remember sitting there as a student, budgeting for my $1 bowl of rice at Kika Sushi, and giving you my $1 for that person in Haiti, because you made it real. Those people were not far away from me. Those people were right in front of me. You changed my world, my mind, my heart, and my life. I carry this with me into every room I walk into. And what you built does not end here. It lives in all of us. And I am very grateful to be one of the lucky ones. Thank you, Dr. Satya. And next, I will welcome Jackie Ha to the stage, my dear friend.
Hello. My name is Jackie Ha. When I came across the nonviolence studies minor, it immediately resonated with me. Not because it was something new, but because it put a framework around values I had already carried. Human dignity, compassion over punishment, the belief that how we treat people matters deeply. What inspired me about the HIMSA Center was that it treated nonviolence as a living philosophy, something practical you could actually apply to my work and my life. That spoke directly to me. After I graduated from Cal Poly and got my master's in social work, I went into clinical social work at a California state hospital in a forensic setting. If there is any place that will test my belief in nonviolence, it would be there. The patients I work with are some of the most misunderstood people in our society. They come to us through the criminal courts, some found incompetent to stand trial, others not guilty by reason of insanity. Many have lived their entire lives inside cycles of trauma, neglect, poverty, and yes, violence. They have often been both victims and perpetrators of harm. The world largely sees them as dangerous. The system largely sees them through a legal lens. But because of Ahimsa, I was able to see every single day that they are human beings who needed help long before they ever needed handcuffs. The Ahimsa Center's teaching shaped how I showed up for those patients. It shaped how I communicate with them with patience and without judgment. It shaped how I advocate for them within treatment teams and within a system that can sometimes feels less than therapeutic. And it shaped how I think about conflict, whether that is a patient in crisis or a disagreement with a colleague. To understand that nonviolence is not just something I study, it is something I practice with every client interaction, every treatment plan, every advocacy effort, every moment to choose, every moment to choose compassion over convenience. Working with this population has not weakened my belief in nonviolence, my belief in ahimsa. It has deepened it. Because when I choose to see someone's humanity that the world has written off, and they begin to trust me because of that, that to me is what ahimsa actually looks like. It takes real courage, and it works in ways punishment never could. Looking forward, I believe ahimsa is more relevant than ever, especially in forensic mental health and in systems that sit at an intersection of justice and care. The place I feel most called to carry this forward is in teaching and mentoring others, future social workers, new clinicians, interns entering this field. The HIMSA Center gave me that foundation. It's become part of my responsibility and honestly, my privilege to pass it forward. That is what HIMSA means to me, and that is the connection I carry with me into everything I do. So thank you, and thank you, Tara. Thank you. And then Isis Kwong.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Isis Chen, and I'm actually a history bachelor's and a nonviolence minors from here at Cal Poly. And I think when a lot of people enter college, they think they're going to change the world, right? You're still really excited when you come to college. You want everything you learn here to make a difference. And that's great. But when you're a history major, you start learning about the world and you start to get kind of negative because you read about how you repeat the same mistakes over and over, and the changes usually happen after these mistakes. That's why nonviolent studies, though, was so different for me. Before we make the mistakes, we can make change. We don't have to wait till history tells us we were wrong. We can be active. We can make change now. And I'm biased. I am a history major, but I really do think that ahimsa and history go hand in hand because you learn about your fellow man, you learn about what they did, you relate to them, and then that fosters empathy. Now, today, I work at the Homestead Museum. And shameless plug, come see us. We're like 10, 15 minutes away. We're free. But I want to talk about a little bit about why ahimsa is so important to the museum field. So museums are at this very unique place where we have a lot of authority. People really trust us. They think we know what we're talking about 100%. People who often no longer trust academia, or they think history is pointless and useless, or they're just kids who think history is boring, they'll give it a chance at museums. We're uniquely posed for this. And as a result, museums are terrified of saying the wrong thing. Traditionally, we keep it safe, right? I'm sure you guys have all been to especially smaller historic institutions where it's the same narrative. It tends to be rich white people whose stories are told. This is how these museums started. This is the story we keep telling. Now, things are changing, which is great, but the people in museums, we have to make these changes. And we're scared because museum workers, we make about as little money as you think, and the jobs are few and in between, and we fear that if we speak up, if we push, then we're gonna lose this job that we worked so hard to get. Because there is still a lot of pushback on us speaking out on issues we find important. But I fully believe that museums are not neutral. And my job is to make the historical messages reach more people by telling their stories. So our museum, we serve mostly the Hacienda La Puente area. That's an area that tends to be lower income. It tends to be immigrant families. They're not going to come to the museum, especially as children, and relate to the stories of just the rich elite. So it's my job to help push more stories of the people who lived there, the people who look like them, the people that can be the gateway to their empathy. And we've done a really good job at the museum. I'm very proud of what we've done. We have made statements on Black Lives Matter. We've added indigenous land acknowledgements. We have plans in place for if ICE comes when we have children here, because we see almost all the fourth graders in the HLP district, actually. So we've done good things. We can still do more. We are working more on having more cultural programs. We used to be so strict. If it didn't happen in the museum's history, we weren't going to talk about it. But we just had the Maori, we had Azteca, we had Japanese performers, we had all of them over, and I'm really proud of what we've done because museums are not neutral. History should be prescriptive, and inaction speaks too loudly for us to ignore.
All right. Hello, my name is Ramon. I graduated from Cal Poly in 2020 with a minor in interdisciplinary nonviolent studies. Oh, sorry about that. All right, real quick, I agree with Samantha. We need some sort of disclaimer on this minor because world changing. So when Dr. Setia first came to me and asked me if I had considered the minor, I hadn't. I honestly didn't know that Cal Poly offered it. I was working full-time in banking and studying full-time, so I had very little room for a social life or extra activities. So I initially just brushed it off, telling myself that I was busy enough. However, as many of you know, Dr. Setia can be very persuasive. So on her second approach, she somehow divined exactly what was holding me back. And she told me she had looked at my transcript, and I was only missing 2 or 3 classes plus a capstone, and if I was interested. It sounded simple enough. I said, sure, sign me up. Again, no idea how much that would change the rest of my life. I hadn't realized just how interdisciplinary the minor would be. It pushed me to broaden my horizons in unexpected ways. For instance, I initially thought that a mindfulness class seemed a little bit too new age. I didn't see how it connected to nonviolence. Dr. Setia and my other professors quickly clarified that to truly practice nonviolence, one must first learn self control, to not react harshly or instantly, but to pause, breathe, and gather our thoughts. Simultaneously, I was burning out at work, and I felt like I was losing my mind. I decided to try therapy, and soon realized that therapy is largely about mindfulness, observing our thoughts and feelings without feeling a need to react to them. This realization helped me integrate therapy, mindfulness, and nonviolence into my daily life. Other courses like Causes of War and Peace reframed my thinking that peace is not just an absence of war. It is a proactive state that needs to be maintained and spread. The capstone and nonviolence courses synthesize these ideas into an entirely new worldview. As part of my capstone, I attended several seminars through the Ahimsa Center. One specific sentence from those talks that changed my perspective forever was that the biggest mistake people make is to think that they are done learning. That too often, people graduate, start working, and assume that they are finished. But the worst thing that we can do is close our minds. When we think that we can't learn anymore, we stop growing. I think about this constantly, especially during my daily doom scroll. I learned the hard way, never go into the comments section. I used to earnestly try to educate people there, explaining that the world is much bigger than what we see in our towns or on the news. Eventually, I had to stop. There is no gain when people are just talking past each other. Once anger enters, meaningful dialogue dies. Some will always prefer the shadows of the wall of Plato's cave, and that is completely up to them, and they're right. They can make that choice. As the saying goes, however, you're not expected to solve all of the world's problems, but neither are you permitted to stop trying. Now, if I engage at all, I state a fact and leave it there. If things get heated, I walk away. You don't need to fight. You don't need to be right. Desire is the root of all suffering, so the Buddha teaches us. Ahimsa also taught me that nonviolence doesn't require a grand master plan. It starts with small personal changes. I eventually left banking for civil service to escape the grinding gears of capitalism, a system which often harms our planet and fellow travelers. I wanted a job that existed for the benefit of the people. Today, I work with California State Disability Insurance Department. It has challenges, but the program is designed to be administered liberally. My job isn't to put up roadblocks, but it's to help people navigate bureaucracy to help them get their benefits. It's a small victory, but it allows my soul to rest. I'm not changing the world all at once, but I am changing it one case at a time. Beyond that, I am trying, but not always successful in giving back, and realizing that I have enough, that I do not need more when there are so many that have so much less. This has led me to get involved in mutual aid programs such as Water Drop LA, which distributes water to the unhoused in Skid Row, or LA Community Fridges, which provides a safe space for people to leave food and get food without stigma or shame. Small victory. I wish I could leave you all with some grand wisdom like the Ahimsa Center, my professors, and the minor in nonviolence has left on me. But I do not have some grand plan or way to solve everything. I simply remind you to keep your mind and heart open. Never stop learning. Never stop loving. And in the words of Gandhi, be the change you wish to see in the world. Be the change. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Imani Williams. I'm a third year law student at Loyola Law School, and I graduated from Cal Poly Pomona with my bachelor's in 2021. I first want to apologize for not being able to be there in person today to say goodbye to such a wonderful and influential center and program as the Ahimsa Center was and still is. And so I first encountered the Ahimsa Center when I decided to pursue a minor in nonviolent studies. I wasn't really sure what to expect. Then after my first meeting with Professor Cynthia, that's when I understood and knew that I would be learning tools that are rooted in compassion and forgiveness and humanity. And so I was fortunate enough to be able to volunteer with the Prison Education Project during undergrad at Cal Poly. And there I taught courses on forgiveness and healing and introduction to college to juveniles and juvenile detention centers. And I realized that a lot of the young people that I had encountered were holding on to a lot of pain and anger and self-blame because they'd gone through unimaginable circumstances. And so what I always try to prioritize is forgiveness and letting them know that nonviolent studies and forgiveness healing is not something that's passive. It's an active but often difficult choice to make to respond to injustices with humanity and respond to things that you've personally gone through with compassion for yourselves, and letting them know that it's okay to forgive themselves and also forgive the people around them. It's not a weakness, it's a strength to do so, because that's what leads to internal peace and can lead them down a different path. And I say this because teaching those courses is what made me realize that I wanted to pursue a career in law, become a lawyer, civil rights lawyer, or a public defender, so I could continue this work on a broader scale. Our criminal legal system in this country tends to prioritize retributive approach to punishment, but I want to try and implement rehabilitation in our criminal legal system and into these facilities and allow incarcerated persons to be able to forgive themselves and have self-compassion, because that could lead to lower recidivism rates and could lead to them going down a different path when they are released. And it's also important, something that I also learned from Ahimsa, is that society should know to have compassion for these people that are incarcerated and know that they are capable of change, because everyone is capable of changing their lives. And so, yeah, I learned a lot of my advocacy tools from Ahimsa, and I am excited and happy to use those in the future when I do graduate and start practicing. And I think that a lot of that is important today as well, where we are in our country and in this world. There's a really deep divide politically, socially, culturally, and I think that a lot of people are leading with hate, and the Ahimsa Center and the teachings that we have learned from it are ever so important now. And so the people that are currently at this event and that have dedicated their lives to teaching how to create meaningful change through compassion, through morals, and through just prioritizing love. It is so important right now, and I appreciate all the work that everyone does. And I'm so happy that I got to be a part of a wonderful center that has changed my life and changed the way I think about things and approach everyday things as well. So thank you.
You got it?
Hello, my name is Elise Peterson, and I had the most humiliating experience of my life via the Ahimsa Center, and this is, it's a good thing. Come on, we're all here to be grateful, so let me share the story with y'all. This was back in 2006, and I was in my final semester here at Cal Poly, and as a Kellogg Scholar, I was done with my credits to graduate, but I still had, I'm so sorry, it's my daughter crying. Aisha, you want to come, baby? Come. Yeah, she'll come here. So I still had credits to attend classes, and but I was done with my major. I was actually in the College of Agriculture, so I had no affiliation with the social sciences or the Ahimsa Center. But a class got my attention, Indian history taught by Dr. Sethia, um, and it changed my life, obviously. But let me get to the humiliating part. So. It was 2006, right when I was graduating. It was the end of the semester, and Dr. Sethia had invited all the students to the Ahimsa Center conference that year. And she invited the students to give a very brief statement at the end of the conference about how we felt of the conference. And I had a little speech I had prepared, and we were to go up right after the keynote by Vandana Shiva, and I was not prepared for her talk. I was not prepared at all. I don't even really remember what she said, but it was just so powerful. It was so moving what she was saying, and it wasn't even the words; it was just the feeling, the energy of it. And I didn't realize how moved I was at the moment. It wasn't until Dr. Sethia had invited all the students to come up on stage, and I could go to the mic, and I had, in my head, the little speech I had put together all in my head. But as soon as I saw the crowd, and this was a packed house, Vandana Shiva definitely brought in the crowd, I could see in their face their movement and what that speech had done for them, and I just had this wave of emotion just come over me. It was like a tsunami of emotion. And I couldn't talk, and I was just hyperventilating. I was crying. I'd never again in my life experienced anything like this. And what was so humiliating was I was doing this in front of all these strangers, a lot of strangers. And I couldn't even put my words together, but I think everybody understood. And to make matters worse, once I went to sit down next to the boy I had a crush on, and I'm there crying and so embarrassed. Nirmal had his closing words, and he pointed me out in the crowd, and it was like it's like people like her that we do this, and I was just even more humiliated. But here's the good part. It took me decades. Now it's been decades. I can say it's been 20 years. Oh my goodness. Well, it took me decades to articulate why that was such a positive experience for me. I knew at the time it was positive. It was embarrassing, but I knew it was positive. And the reason why is humility. I'm a tech CEO now, and my ego should be big, right? And I had conflict with that. But humility is actually about our ego. It's when your ego is so complete and so full that you're aware of your nothingness. You're aware of your interconnectedness with everything else. And that's exactly what humility is. And so I think humiliation is actually a very positive thing. And that's what I've learned from the Ahimsa Center. I wasn't even in the Ahimsa Center program. I just took one class with Dr. Sethia. And it just totally changed my life. And it's brought the importance of humility to my own life. I've had many moments of success now as a CEO, and people always ask, what is the key of your success? And I always say, it's humility, it's humility, it's humility. And it took me decades to articulate that it is about ego. Your ego is so full that you are nothing. And so I share that now in my work, and impressing the importance upon everybody that I interact with, humility and this interconnectedness, and how our decisions and our behaviors directly impact others, and the well-being of others directly impacts our own happiness. Our own happiness is not a vacuum of our own contentment. It's actually the contentment of us and everybody around us. And I'm very grateful that I've been invited back. Even though I wasn't an official part of the Ahimsa Center, I didn't know there was a minor. Y'all got minors? I took one class. I can't imagine what a minor would have done to me, but But yeah, I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful that I was able to share my work that I now do in tea, and a lot of my work is in the Indian tea industry and learning about the history of colonization and the role that tea has played in that, and the work that still needs to be done to replant those roots and to rebuild the communities that tea has negatively impacted over all these centuries. And I was grateful I could share that at an Ahimsa conference back in 2017. And I'm very sad that I had to come back again now to say farewell. But I feel from everybody's talks today that this work is not over. No one's done with it. So I'm grateful that I'll be able to carry out in my own work and helping influence the importance of humility as we move forward and rebuild our world. Thank you.
Yeah. So we'll have about 10 minutes of